Hi everyone, welcome to the Open Mapping and Successful Bike-sharing Systems event. My name is Iván De la Lanza, and I will have the honor to be the host and to moderate this fantastic panel. Thank you so much for joining us today on the International Open Data Day, which is an annual global event that promotes awareness and use of open data. And today we're gonna celebrate this with the Latin American Bike Knowledge Sharing Association, which is leading this fantastic event. And thank you for the effort. And thank you to the Open Knowledge Foundations who makes possible this event. And of course, a great honor to our friend Russell Meddin. And during to the next hour, we will have the next hour and a half, we're going to have a great panel. We are going to talk about the importance of open data in transport, but specifically in bike sharing systems. So collecting bike sharing system data and monitoring them lead us to understand and to recognize its unique elements to possible success and the challenge who has to increase and to develop the bike sharing systems. It also stimulates the development of innovations and the new technologies by generating greater public recognition and engagement. Open maps such as the Bike-share map, the Meddin Bike-sharing World Map, and the Latin American Bike-sharing map were developed with this purpose. And it's a must for all of the actors involved in the bike-sharing ecosystem to incentivize and promote such an incentive. So today we are having a wonderful pack of panelists, people who many of us have been admire the work that they have been done since the last years. Of course, we have our friend, and thank you for inviting me to this, Gabriela Binatti from Latin American Bike Knowledge Sharing. We have Samantha Herr from North American Bike-share Association. We have Oliver O'Brien from the Bike-share map. And we have Paul DeMaio from the Meddin Bike-sharing World Map. So just to talk a little bit about the agenda, the organization is going to be, the session is organized in the next 95 minutes. I already took almost like 5 minutes for the introduction of as a moderator. I will be the moderator for this panel. I will be happy to read your comments and questions on the comment panel, so you can do it right on your right, so you can type your comments there. Any questions? Then we're going to have 40 minutes for the panelists to present the experience, the challenge, and the results and the impacts of their work, the good practices, and any other relevant topics that might want to present. So we're going to have 10 minutes for each speaker. And then we're going to have 20 minutes to moderate questions. So please leave the questions on English on the chat, as I said. And then we will have between 15 to 30 minutes to open debate. So we can ask them to participate and to formulate any questions there as well. And of course to the panel. So we are ready. Let's get ready with this. I'm gonna present the first of our speakers today. So he is Paul DeMaio. Paul is the principal of Metro Bike, which he founded in 2005 to hasten the introduction and growth of bike-share. DeMaio assisted in authoring the first bike-share request for proposals in the US for Arlington County in Virginia, which became the capital bike-share system in 2010, and now has over 620 stations in the Washington, D.C. region. And DeMaio is the co-creator of, is the creator of Bike-sharing Blog, an international collection of bike-share news, and co-author or co-curator of the Meddin Bike-sharing World, a global map of bike-sharing systems. DeMaio has the Master of Transportation Policy, Operations, and Logistics, and a Bachelor of City Planning. So please, Paul, if you want to do your presentation.
All right, thank you, Iván. I'm going to share my screen here. Okay. Can you see that?
Yes, we can see the screen.
Wonderful. Great. Good day, everyone. I hope you're doing well, and it's an honor to be part of this great group of presenters today. I'll be talking about the Bike-sharing World Map. So the map started in 2007. I created it in an effort to get more individuals interested in bike sharing, which was very new at the time. There were just a couple systems in Europe, Denmark and France. So used a Google Maps backend, I'll call it, and over time, I guess in 2009, it went from basically being maybe one system, one new system that I would be adding to the map maybe every couple of weeks, then to becoming one system that was being added every couple of days. And fortunately, around that time, I met Russell Meddin and befriended him. He then helped me with the map and eventually took over the map as it became more and more time consuming for one to do for fun. So the map looked like this for many, many years, from 2007 to 2020. And then, and here's Russell, and again, he was spending hours and hours a day, 10,000 plus hours spent updating the map. There were over 3,000 entries, 4 million views, and the map very much being used by academics, the bike share industry, and media around the world. Unfortunately, Russell passed away about a year ago, but I wanted to keep the map useful and continuing. So I reached out to Oliver O'Brien, who's a presenter later today, and we worked together to bring the map into to the new decade. We created this I think a wonderful upgrade of the map. The new website here is bikesharingworldmap.com, and there are many new benefits that I'll point out to you as I continue with my presentation, that made the map easier to use, made it searchable, made it visually easier to understand the systems that are that exist. So this is what it looks like right now, and this is a zoom of one of the systems in Sao Paulo in Brazil, Bike Sampa in Itaú system. So it's quite easier to use. I'm going to try to go over here. Hopefully, let's see. Hopefully, Iván, can you see the screen as well?
Yes, I can perfectly see the screen.
Okay, yeah. Excellent. So this is the map here, bikesharingworldmap.com, and as I mentioned, it's searchable. So, for example, let's see, let's type in. So we can go to Bogota, and it'll show the a plan system that is let's see, scheduled for 2019. It looks like maybe it has come about, or actually, here we are. Here's the open system, BCCO. So it's very easy to use. You can tell the launch date. We have links to where you can download the app, information about the newspaper articles, or maybe web links to more information should people want to learn more about it. So it's a quite interesting improvement and much easier to use than what we had previously. So I'm going to jump back over here. Let's see. Okay, so jumping back into the PowerPoint. So I mentioned some of the improvements of the map in that it's easier to read than it had been in the past. The search feature, the images, and here in Mexico and San Luis Potosi, I guess maybe Yoy bike sharing. So here's another example. Before, we did not have the ability to have images as part of the map, but now we do. And we also have date stamped fleet size changes, and also a live count at the top of the map, which is right here. You can actually scroll this from left to right, and you can see how many systems are either planned, open, hibernating, meaning maybe seasonally not functioning, maybe due to winter, systems that have been suspended, closed, or canceled in the planning stages. So quite useful information. And also the database behind the map is now much more useful than previously, in that it's not public facing, but if we get data requests from academia, from the media, or nonprofits, we can then go into the database and use it as an Excel spreadsheet to find the data that we're specifically looking for, maybe by country, by continent, or other search needs, search queries that one may be interested in. So the Meddin Bike-sharing World Map is now co-curated on 5 continents, but we cover all the continents, and it includes Oliver O'Brien, who I mentioned is presenting later today, Renata Rebello in Brazil, Chumin Yu in Australia, Jess Seaman and Steve Chu from North America. We've also reached out to ITDP for help with the China portion of the map, because there's so much coming out of China in terms of bike sharing systems. So we have Den Hong and also Jacob Mason from ITDP, and then myself as well. So the data sources that we use are Google Alerts. This has been our primary way of getting information from around the world. We have a variety of different search phrases, all that mean the same thing. So this is just a handful of them. Obviously, there are many more words and phrases that we use. And we get a lot of information from people like you who have a good sense of what's going on in your neck of the world, your country, your city. And we get emails to the bike-sharing world map at gmail.com. So that's also been very helpful for us in keeping abreast of what's going on. So with that, I'll say thank you and gracias, obrigado. Yuspagara and Solpaki, forgive me for my pronunciation. Thank you so much for your time today, and I'm happy to answer any questions about the Meddin Bike-sharing World Map.
Fantastic, Paul. Thank you very much. It was very interesting presentation. So we already have the questions, but we are going to wait until the end of the panel. So let's get ready with our next guest, which is Oliver O'Brien. Oliver is a researcher and technical manager at the University College of London's Consumer Data Research Center, specializing in consumer and retail data sets and geodemographics. He has been mapping bike-sharing systems since 2010, when London's bike-sharing system launched with a poorly designed official map, and he's doing a long-time contributor to the OpenStreetMap project. So welcome, Oliver.
Thank you very much, Ivan, and thank you to Labiks for the invitation to speak at this afternoon's conference. I'm just going to share my screen. Is that okay, Ivan?
Not yet, Oliver. I'm not able to see it.
Oops, okay, let's try again.
Let's give another.
Oh, there you go.
Now we have it, yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to spend the next 10 minutes or so talking about the Bike-Share Map project, but I'll also link at the end of my talk to the Bike-Sharing World Map that Paul has just presented about. And as Ivan says, I'm based at University College London in the UK at the Consumer Data Research Centre. And I've been at UCL for around 12 years. And I've in fact been curating Bike-share Map partly as a University College London project and partly as my own personal interest project for 11 years now. So a brief history of the Bike-share Map, as I say, as Ivan mentioned, it started in 2010 to create a map of the London bike-share system, where you didn't need to click on pins to see which docking stations were empty or full, but rather just present it on a single map. The basic design of Bike-share Map has been always a full screen map, make the map as big as possible so that you can see all the data, and use colored circles and a muted background so that the focus is on the bikes where the docking stations are. After I created the system, the website for London in 2010, I added a second system, Philadelphia. There was a colleague of mine in North America tipped me off to the Philadelphia system, and then I discovered that there is a whole world of APIs, data APIs, and other sources of data for bike sharing systems, even back in 2010, which allowed me to pull in their data and apply the same mapping technique to those as well. And pretty much it's gone on since then. It's, as I say, it covers around 500 cities around now, which is around 25% of the current bike share systems in the world. It depends exactly how you measure it, but roughly speaking, there's around 2,000 bike sharing systems in the world. That's around 2,000 cities or towns who have a bike share fleet. In the last few years, getting the data has been easier due to data standards such as GBFS, and I believe we will hear from one of our next presenters, NABSA, about this particular standard, which has been very useful for projects like the bike sharing map as being an open standard data format, and also popular data formats such as GeoJSON. However, also in recent years, availability of data has become harder because of a tendency these days for many cities to specify dockless systems because they're cheaper for the city often, but these tend to be fully commercial and therefore are less interested and motivated to share their data, which potentially could be used by a commercial rival. There is also a tendency also these days towards operator created and controlled apps rather than websites. So traditionally a website has been the way an operator has publicized their bike sharing system, but more recently with apps which are a more closed environment, it means it's therefore harder to get the data and see what's going on in many bike sharing systems. So just to mention the data sources that are used in the bike sharing map to get the data for around 500 cities currently in the world. Multi-city operator run data platforms are very useful. So JCDecaux, which is a major, mainly European operator of bike shares, has long provided an open data platform to allow people to get the data for their systems very easily, such as the Paris system, which is still the biggest in the Western world, and Brussels. There's also Nextbike, which run many systems, again, mainly in Europe, but also in parts of Asia. They have a standard data feed, which pulls in all of their 200 or so systems in a single file. Then individual cities have standard APIs that are used across different operators. And this is touching on South America here because PBSC and Shift, I know, have recently won a number of contracts for South American cities. And the great thing about those is they come with a standardized format that they've used for many years for London and for New York, which meant adding in Rio following the change and some other South American cities was very easy. Some other examples include U-Bike in Taiwan, Smooth, which is again Europe and Russia, and Yuan, which is Chinese cities, and finally Clear Channel, which is a major advertiser but also provider of bike share systems, such as the very large system in Mexico City. I've already mentioned GBFS. GBFS was created by operators, but is now very popular with cities to such an extent that many cities, particularly in North America, now specify a GBS feed must be supplied with a bike share system if it is to be blessed by the city. There are also third-party data consumers, standardizers and republishers, such as City Bikes and Pi Bikes. And finally, individual large city systems do also have APIs. As I go down this list, essentially this is where it gets harder and harder to pull the data in. And Bike Share Map doesn't pretend to map every city in the world. It say only maps 25%. Information on every city in the world is covered by the Meddin Bike-sharing World Map that Paul has already mentioned. And finally, some of the largest cities I do have to get by web scraping. So they have not provided a standardized API, but there is still a way to get the data just by mining it from their map. This is a little bit out of date, this map, but it does give you a good idea of GBFS, how the coverage of this relatively new data standard. So the cities in green have GBFS feeds. The cities in blue do as well. It's just I don't use them because I already have an existing good feed with those particular operators. And finally, the cities in red, at the time that I created this graphic, which was a couple of years ago, did not have a GBFS feed. You can see there's clear geographical clustering here. Asia has been poor in terms of its GBFS coverage. Europe, Eastern Europe has been good. Western Europe has been bad. North America has been pretty good, and South America is getting better quickly. As I say, PBSC does provide GBFS feeds, and I believe some of the other operators do too. So this is I'm not going to go into this slide in too much detail, but it is important because, as I say, this is a meeting about open data and open mapping. And of course, there are different kinds of openness. So the very best kind of openness is where an operator or a city provides open data with an open license. In other words, a document which declares what people can do with the data, such as map it, without worries about potential legal violations or other issues. France is very good for this, as is Norway, and actually the London system, which is my local one, is also good. Also, some cities, particularly in the US, have been very proactive at saying that operators must provide open data. This essentially allows for easy creation of a third-party app ecosystem, which allows independent developers to create novel applications, apps, web apps, which could potentially lead to a more effective system, a more well-used system, or create potential users of the bike-sharing system that the operator may not have thought of. Other companies provide the data for free, but you do have to agree to a data license agreement, such as Shift or JC2Co. I've also had chats over the years with various operators, such as Beryl, U-Bike China, Social Bicycles, which sadly is no longer, Smooth, and PBSC themselves. And there is an implicit agreement or tacit agreement with these companies that mapping is okay, but they don't all necessarily have a published license saying the data is open. Nextbike as well probably falls into that category as well, because they've had a very stable API which has not changed over many years. And finally, GBFS itself does have a way you can specify a license. However, it is optional and most providers don't specify it. There has been some talk about making it mandatory for the license to be specified for version 2 of GBFS, which is currently being developed, and those discussions are ongoing. But like I say, the focus, GBFS is not necessarily just open data, but rather standardized data for cities. So the fact that some GBFS data is open is a bonus. A quick note on open data and privacy. Now, it's great having open data, obviously, but there are potential issues with it. You do need to be careful, particularly for dockless systems, where in theory you could reveal the home or office address of a user who you see using a bike in a different part of a city, simply by tracking the bike IDs and seeing when they appear on the feed. Some steps towards minimizing the issue can include changing the IDs of the bikes that are broadcast every time a bike is used, or generalizing, that is, not making precise the location. These concerns are real, but they are often used as an excuse by operators not to publish their bike locations at all. Whereas actually it is a good idea for locations to be published so that we can understand how our streets in our cities are being used by these operators, and how coverage is affected. So Bike-share Map itself has long been a freely available and impartial source of mapping for bike-share systems. It's open for use. However, I have not got around to publishing an open license. That's largely because it's not specifically been asked for, and it is an end-user website. However, it is certainly my aspiration at some point to tidy up my code, publish it on GitHub, and potentially, therefore, open up Bike-share Map even more. Just to quickly mention two other similar mapping projects, City Bikes, and finally Mountain Math project, which is generated automatically from a directory of GPS feeds created by NABSA. And finally, I just wanted to merge the previous talk with this talk, the future of Bike Share Map and Bike Share World Map. The Bike Sharing World Map, as Paul said, has been going since 2007. And as Paul mentioned, we have a number of regional focus editors from around the world. And I built a new website working with Paul because, as I say, as he mentioned, the old maps was quite hard to keep updated. It's long been my aspiration to merge the two websites together, and indeed these are conversations I had with Russell before his sad passing last year. So it's a when I get the time project, but it doesn't make any sense for me and Paul, or me for European part of Bike Sharing World Map, and to be managing two different global bike share databases together. The Bike Share Map code is quite old. It is somewhat out of date. It probably makes sense for me to rewrite the mapping using the Bike Sharing World Map code, which I've developed in the last year and therefore is very fresh in my mind. So that is certainly my plan, so that for the 500 cities where we do have live data, we see that data on Bike Sharing World Map, but we still have at least a reference to the 1,500 cities for which we don't have data. So thank you very much for your time. Bike Share Map is at bikesharemap.com. I also have a blog at oobrien.com, where I occasionally blog about bike sharing map and other mobility related services and projects. And finally, I'm on Twitter at OOBR. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Oliver. This is great news for every one of us to know that now we are going to have a new fantastic map between you and Paul and all the guys who makes this possible. So thank you very much for this information. It's wonderful to know. So let's go now. We have many questions and we have been taking on from the chat as well. So let's go on now with Samantha Herr. She's the executive director from NABSA. So Sam has been in NABSA executive director since 2017 and has been working in the field of shared micromobility since 2012. And prior to NABSA, she has held position with the city of Boston Portland Bike Share Incorporated, the Bicycle Coalition in Maine, and as a mobility researcher with a focus on bicycle transportation. She holds a BA in anthropology and an MA in geography. So please, Sam, welcome to this event and thank you very much for being here.
Okay, thank you. Can you see my screen now?
Not now, but I think it's coming maybe. Let's give another try.
Oh, there we go. Just a little bit of a delay. All right. Well, thank you, Iván, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you to Labiks for inviting me here today and all the other panelists that I have the pleasure of being on this panel today with. So wonderful to be here. As Iván mentioned, I'm the executive director of the North American Bike Share Association, or we call it NABSA for short. NABSA is a nonprofit membership-based industry association for shared micromobility in North America. We support, promote, and enhance shared alternatives to traditional transportation. And our members represent host cities, operators, system owners, equipment manufacturers, and other service and technology providers in the shared micromobility space that are from the government, nonprofit, and private sectors. NABSA hosts an annual conference where we have shared micromobility and transportation professionals from around the world gather and share learnings and address key issues facing the industry. We also release an annual State of the Industry report tracking in-depth year-over-year metrics that demonstrate shared micromobility's successes and growth across North America. And I'm going to be sharing that more with all of you today. We also offer a knowledge share database of hundreds of resources, webinars, and networking tools for members to connect with one another and access resources that advance the industry. And also, as Oliver mentioned, one of NABSA's long-term efforts have been the stewardship and championing of the open data standard GBFS, which I'll also discuss more further today. So today, what I'll be discussing and sharing with all of you is about NABSA's 2019 State of the Industry Report, GBFS, and some of the newest guidance from municipalities that NABSA released earlier this year on GBFS, and then why this data matters anyway. So let's dive in. There we go. So first, I want to start by discussing our State of the Industry Report, which really shows how data can be important in sharing and demonstrating the impact of bike share and shared micromobility in communities. Last fall, NABSA released our 2019 Shared Micromobility State of the Industry Report, as I mentioned, which uses 2019 data to capture shared micromobility's trends and growth and serve as a baseline for future tracking. So our report shows, for example, that in 2019, North American shared micromobility riders, and when I say shared micromobility, what I'm meaning is bike share and scooter share. Bike share can be traditional pedal bikes and also is inclusive of e-bikes as well. Riders of shared micromobility in total took 157 million trips across 194,000 vehicles. Shared micromobility trips resulted in 30 million hours of additional physical activity. Shared micromobility trips resulted in an offset of 65 million pounds of CO2 emissions when comparing trips alone. We also learned that overall, 36% of shared micromobility trips replaced a car trip in North America in 2019, and that the average shared micromobility trip was 1.3 miles long and lasted for 23 minutes. And e-scooters had somewhat higher utilization rates than bikes, while bikes had longer trip distances and durations. And also, when comparing system average utilization rates, shared e-bikes were used more intensively than traditional pedal bikes. And here's a map included in our report. We found that in 2019, at least 292 cities in North America had one or more bike share and or scooter share systems in service. And importantly, other maps and open data, such as the ones that have been discussed already at this event today earlier, helped us to understand the overall footprint of shared micromobility across North America and contributed to the data that informed our report. So we as well are really appreciative of the efforts that Paul and Oliver have talked about already earlier on this panel. And this report, this State of the Industry report, is important because we can collect, generate, and spread knowledge about shared micromobility's impact in the industry that can leverage the support of policymakers as well as other industries and stakeholders. So an example of this, for example, we've shared this report with legislators and policymakers in North America. And for example, even just this week, our report, some of the statistics in our report were cited by the Urban Land Institute promoting the value of micromobility for real estate and urban development. So in this way, data and reports like this are an important advocacy tool. And just an update here that we are currently working on a 2020 report, which will capture the impact of COVID-19 on shared micromobility in North America and also include some comparisons between 2019 and 2020 metrics. So stay tuned for that. And in the meantime, you can access both English and Spanish versions of the 2019 report by going to nabsa.net/industry. There we go. So why open data? Open data can help us understand the impact of bike share and shared micromobility more broadly by making information accessible to researchers and industry stakeholders. It can help us make the case for more growth and investment in bike share and shared micromobility by contributing to doing the first thing I just mentioned. It can help drive ridership by making data available to be ingested by trip planning apps. And it can help integrate bike share and shared micromobility with other modes, making a better user experience for riders. And GBFS is one open data source that contributes to doing these things. So under NABSA's leadership, the General Bike Share Feed Specification, also known as GBFS, version 1 was developed by a team of bike share system owners and operators, application developers, and technology vendors back in 2015. In 2019, NABSA selected an organization called Mobility Data to become the technical steward for the GBFS community, which involved improving the specification and its governance to meet evolving industry needs. NABSA and Mobility Data continue to partner on this effort today. Oliver alluded to a GBFS version 2.0. It requires the rotation of bike ID after every trip, among other things, and was released in March 2020. And there's also a version 2.1-RC2, which supports dockless and hybrid systems, and more extensive pricing representation which was released last October. And this specification was modeled after the widely used General Transit Feed Specification, or GTFS, and it defines a common format to share real-time status of a shared mobility system. And so for those less familiar, what this consists of is basically a number of files made up of defined fields that describe data about the current status of a system at a point in time. And so importantly, this GBFS format allows mobility data to be used by a range of software applications. As you've seen, it helps inform some mapping, but it also helps in applications for trip planning, for research, analysis, visualizations, and regulation. And this data also helps regulators, researchers, and community members to gain insights that have helped our municipalities and communities meet goals. So currently, over 450 bike share and scooter systems worldwide have adopted GBFS since its release in November of 2015. And we found in our 2019 report that 56% of North American cities required the general bike share feed specification. And earlier this year, NABSA released a new guidance document, which is available in both English and Spanish, and possibly maybe working on Portuguese later this year, targeted primarily as a resource for municipal staff to better understand and utilize GBFS. NABSA held a GBFS developers workshop. It was our first one back in 2019, jointly with Mobility Data, which was an event that we brought together public, private, and nonprofit sector data specialists and GBFS stakeholders to dig into key issues to move the specification forward. And from that event, we learned that there was really a need for municipal staff in particular to have more guidance about what GBFS is and how to best engage with it. And so that led to a year-long effort to develop this guidance document, which is called Data Good Practices for Municipalities, Understanding the General Bike Share Feed Specification. And so inside this document, you can find information on what GBFS is, how it differs from other shared mobility data standards, and why and how to use it specifically for the municipal context. And it also provides recommendations for good practice to ensure the most effective use of the specification and a list of additional resources. So definitely encourage you to check that out. You can find that at nabsa.net/GBFS, again, both in English and in Spanish. And also, with the increasing ability to have access to data and all the benefits it can bring, user data privacy, as Oliver mentioned, is also an increasing area of importance for the field of shared micromobility and also for shared mobility more broadly. Currently, NABSA is working in collaboration with an organization called the New Urban Mobility Alliance and another organization called the Open Mobility Foundation to draft mobility data privacy principles. And so in this project, we've gathered a variety of stakeholders representing about 30 different organizations and some academics and experts to discuss and dissect issues around user data privacy to arrive at principles that can guide organizations when making technical and policy decisions that have privacy implications. This work is very much still in progress, but some of the topics that we are thinking about and might be helpful for you to think about as well are your purpose of data collection, processing, storing, and sharing of mobility data, the amount of data that is necessary to meet that purpose, the communication and transparency around purposes, practices, and policies around mobility data, protocols for protecting user privacy, protections when sharing data, and community engagement. So again, as I mentioned, this project continues underway, and we expect to release these principles later this year, and organizations will be able to sign on to them. So there are ways to both address privacy considerations while also benefiting from shared micromobility data that inform things like the mapping efforts that have been discussed today and metrics efforts like the report, NABSA State of the Industry report. And mapping and metrics are important, and they help the industry to learn about the industry by providing meaningful insights to industry professionals, stakeholders, academics, and policymakers. They help to grow the industry by demonstrating impact and gaining support to enable more of that success, and achieve societal goals, for example, around equity, climate change, and public health, by measuring what matters and tracking our progress towards those goals. And so mapping efforts like the ones included on this panel and metrics that are, for example, included in the industry report contribute to the knowledge that we have about bike sharing and shared micromobility and help us to do these things. And so with that, you can connect with NABSA in the ways that you see here on the screen. Stay tuned for our virtual event that I mentioned, our conference coming up this year in October. So our conference this year will be virtual and therefore accessible to even a broader range of folks. So you can subscribe to our newsletter in the homepage of our website for updates on that if you're not on that already. And then also stay tuned for our 2020 North American State of the Industry Report, which will be coming out later this summer. And with that, thank you all so very much, and look forward to hearing from our next panelist.
Wow, fantastic, Sam. Thank you very much. Amazing news for these reports that we all love to have, and looking forward for the next one in the 2020, and of course the next one's 2021. So thank you very much, Sam, and let's go with of course Gabriela Binatti. So let me present Gabriela. Most of you already know and work with Gabriela, but Gabriela it's Executive Director and International Relations from Labiks, the social worker with, she's a social worker with MBA in Environmental Management, Master Degree, student and researcher in Transport Engineering, experience in Project Management and Urban Development Policies, Land Regulation, Participative Master Plan, Urban Mobility and Public Housing, author of the book Mobility and Bicycle Culture in Rio de Janeiro, and co-author of the book The Bicycle in Brazil, winner of the Cycling Visionaries Award, Jury Prize on Velocity, win 2013, and a very, very good friend of all of us. Thank you, Gabriela. Please welcome to this fantastic panel. Gabi, I think you are on mute. You're still on mute.
Sorry, my mistake. Thank you, Iván. Thank you all of you for accepting our invitation to be here today. To me, I'm honored to be here with you, Iván, Samantha, Paul, and Brien. You are my reference when I started. We still are, but you were my reference when I started to study bike sharing systems. So to me, it's an exciting moment. I'm very happy to be here, and thank you very much. And I will share my presentation about Labiks and our Latin American bike sharing maps. So, 1 second. Can you see my presentation?
It has a little bit of delay, I guess, but I guess it's coming. So let's give it a few moments. Okay, it's not coming. I guess
it's not coming. Okay. Sorry. Oh, my computer is not helping me. You have my presentation there, Iván? Do you have?
I think so. Let me just search it. I don't have it in.
I don't believe I have it. Oh, here I find. Now we'll go.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, yeah. It was coming. Yeah. Now it's almost there. I can see just the black screen. Ah, here it is. Yeah.
Okay. So let's start. I'm from Labiks, Latin American biking knowledge sharing. That it's a platform, a website, and we was created with the intent of spread and share knowledge about the Latin American bike sharing systems. Since then, we have been collecting, analyzing, and verifying data from the systems, like with the purpose of generating open knowledge, about this content and expecting that leads us to development of new and successful bike-sharing systems. We definitely believe that research are a key factor in contributing to achieve sustainable cities. So that's why we always stand for the better governmental behavior and the transparency in order to have access to open and reliable information and data. So our values are innovation, collaboration, inclusion, and transparency. We are here because we built the Latin American Bike-sharing Map. That is a map that shows the location of operating bike-sharing systems situated in Latin America. Our map in this moment is with the data of systems operating in the month of December to 2019. So when you access our map, you will find our last updated. It's not a real-time map, but it's a map with some details about the systems. And I think we'll, sorry, 1 second. Our map shows like the location of the systems, and also represents a great effort at collecting, systematizing, and converting data into the open knowledge as a means to assist the improvement of the services provided by government, industry, and civil society. So, 1 second, I have a problem. So everyone must be wondering why we have decided to develop a map of Latin American bike-sharing systems if we already have 2 wonderful worldwide maps, as we saw today with Paul and Oliver's presentations. But we choose that because we know as Latin America is a complex and singular region. And over here, we deal with a disorderly urban development of the cities, which affects directly the mobility systems. We thought it was time to understand and the unique aspect of implementation of bike-sharing systems here in Latin America. And of course, share and make this information public and available. And it's very important to say that our map is a tool to help us understand the needs and the challenge of the bike-sharing systems implementation within Latin American territory, and also to promote the development of new technologies. So we believe we can contribute to Latin America's mobility governance, to development of new studies and research, and to have an overview of the state of art in Latin America about these bike-sharing systems. And also because we saw the lack of data and available information about the systems, about Latin American bike-sharing systems. So our methodology, it was exhaustive, but pleasant work. The data we present in the map were obtained through a deep research, of course. We had to cross and validate all the acquired information. And for that, we consult main reference, such as the Meddin Bike-sharing World Map, the Bike-sharing Map. We had to access the systems operated in cities' websites. We had to track news about bike-sharing systems on Google Alerts too, as Paul DeMaio showed us that we do at the Meddin Bike-sharing Map, they do. And also cross-checking all the available information from different sources to validate it. I want to talk a little bit about the challenge on collecting bike-sharing data in Latin America. This is an example of our database. And during the process of building our map, we faced several challenges. The main challenges were regarding the lack of available information on data about the bike-sharing systems. If we take Brazil, for example, the country which holds the majority of systems in Latin America, has only one system with open data. As Brien mentioned, now we have our systems PBS with PBS technology that have adopted the GBFS standard data, but with open data we just have one. And we've also realized that the lack of standardization of the data is a real difficulty on this kind of research. And another example of that, of this lack of transparency in Latin America, is that it's almost impossible to find out the number of docs in the systems. I don't know if you can see my screen, but if you saw the docs field, the systems that we have the docs number are systems that we find this number at O'Brien's map. That is not all the docs, but it's the docs that are available in this moment, because it's a real-time data on O'Brien's map. So it's very difficult to find this kind of information that we know is very important for planning bike sharing systems, the relation between number of bikes and number of docs. So the data collected also led us to develop other projects, such as the annual report and the data dashboard. The annual report is a detailed study of the collected data, which provides the possibility of following the changes in the region along the years. And we intend to release a new report every year, so we're working on that. And the data dashboard is a tool which is available on our website, Labiks.org, and allow us to cross the data by countries, check the sort of the systems, so you can go there and explore a little bit. And due to all this challenge, we recognize that the importance of today's debate. We decided to get this group together today to strand and to connect all the efforts to make the information and the data of bike sharing system available, bike sharing systems available for everyone. We're certain that the availability of the data can bring us new and successful bike sharing systems along the world. We from Labiks will keep advocating for that, and we'll ask you to join us. So thank you everybody for being here and listen me, and let's start the debate.
Fantastic, thank you very much, Blair. Wonderful presentation, very interesting effort with Labiks for this mapping. So let's go back to our debate and panel of questions. I have so many questions, my God. I shouldn't be prepared for this so much because now I have my questions, and then we have the question from the panel, so from the audience. So I would like to start with the questions, of course, from the audience. So we have two questions that I think it's going to be from Paul and from Oliver, because they have already the maps, and of course for Blair, because it's already the 3 maps now on the website. So Cristiano asked us, have you guys done usability tests with the maps? And the second question will be, have you considered using OpenStreetMap as a database? So maybe you guys, who want to start with this answering?
Oliver, would you like to?
Shall I? Yes, certainly. I'll start that. So, well, I'll answer the second question first, because the first question of Paul, that's mainly relating to Bike Sharing World Map, I think. I haven't done a usability test on my own map, which is, as I say, it is an pretty old website. It's not mobile friendly, and as I say, I do have plans to retire it and move the functionality to Bike Sharing World Map. But in terms of the second question about OpenStreetMap as a data source for docking stations and capacities, presumably. Of course, OpenStreetMap won't provide the live data, but it could still be very useful as a source of docking stations, but also simply revealing cities which have docking stations or bike sharing systems, which we haven't got on the Bike Sharing World Map, and probably not on Bike Share Map either. So it's a great idea. I think OpenStreetMap is probably useful to snapshot to determine whether we are missing cities. In terms of the actual stations themselves, it is. I mean, I've been an editor of OpenStreetMap since 2006, 2007, almost since the project started. So I've, it's amazing watching this other project grow in leaps and bounds, and obviously now used by many organizations. And also it's a background map for both Bike Sharing World Map and Bike Sharing Map. The issue has always been and still is that coverage is very spotty. So the West in particular, particularly the UK, which is where the project started, will often have very good coverage of docking stations, which will be the feature on the ground that will represent a bike sharing system. In other parts of the world, it's a lot less well covered. The other issue is updates. So again, if there's a local contributor on the ground for a city who goes and updates the capacities of a docking station when they expand, then that's great. But chances are we're going to see expansions happen in the data feed coming from the operators or the cities first. So I would love to be able to power the Bike Sharing World Map off OpenStreetMap in terms of its locations. And I do have other projects not related to bike sharing that do indeed do just that. They pull data in from OpenStreetMap and then augment it. But it's just a case of coverage. The Bike Sharing World Map, we're trying to cover every system. And for Bike Sharing Map, I'm trying to cover the live data. And I think in both those cases, OpenStreetMap is not quite there. But it's a great idea just for us to do a check that there's not a city that has been recently added to it that we've missed. Because we're all volunteers on the Bike Sharing World Map. We all do this in our spare time. And ultimately, we only have limited amounts of time on this, and we may just miss data sets. So yeah, looking for OpenStreetMap is a great idea for that, for sure.
Thank you, Oliver. Please, Paul, if you want to address this.
Well, I have a couple skills, but programming is not one of them, unfortunately. So I'll say what he said. I have nothing to add. Ali's he's the brains behind the Bike Sharing World Map. So I'm more of a data entry and administrator. So no, I think Ali's input certainly applies for us.
Fantastic. Gabby, you want to add something? And let me just take one question to this as well, just right now on the comments. Someone says, how much data has been mapped yet in America? Do we have an idea of this? Is Luciana Pires, sorry for mistaking the name. So anyone, please, Gabriela, maybe you have been working with this a lot. So what can you say about this? How many data?
About the other question, the first question, I'm the same of Paul. I have a lot of skills, but technology is not my best. We're trying. We just did the same that Meddin and Paul did. So use Google Maps tool that's easy to manage. So we choose that. We really want to improve and provide a better experience for the users and customers, but now in this moment we're working on that. We're just working as volunteer on this project, as Paul and Meddin did for a long time. So we want, and if everyone wants to help us or to work with us, you are welcome. Just contact Labiks. And about Latin American data, bike sharing system data, we focus on implementation characters. It's different from API data, so we are not mapping number of trips and the characteristics of trips or users. We're mapping the characteristics of implementation of the systems, but we have a lot of data to map because we want to understand how data is, how government under public contracts are asking for data. They need to because of that, you are advocacy for GBFS. Of course, I think this month we will have the GBFS guidance in Portuguese. Sam is almost done, the translation to Portuguese. We are doing together. So we really want to adopt the standardization of data, and we will understand that it's important government adopt this kind of standardization to understand and to monitor and to monitor our systems in Latin America. So we have a lot of data to map yet, to understand the contracts, the business models. Iván did a big research about that. I know he knows more than everybody here about this kind of thing in Latin America. And it's interesting because we have a lot of systems with a lot of different characteristics you will find in Latin America. It's very curious. You have different options to bike sharing system that could be a good option for your city if you live in a small city or in a big city. So we're mapping yet, even though we have a lot of research to do.
Fantastic, thank you, Blaine. Okay, I have a specific question for Sam, but before going to that, I think it's very important that we can address this to the table. So, Oliver, when we were discussing in the previous panel that we have to organize this, you said something like, it really makes big echo on my mind. And it's something like, we have a lot of data maybe now, but not so many people, efforts, resources to map this data or to analyze this data or to processing this data. So I guess I hear this as part of everyone's presentation. So thinking about the future of how we can use this data, and if we have enough data, what is going to happen if we don't have enough resources to process this data? And I have to say, to be honest, I have been more, I'm completely a user because I don't know how to program as well. So I'm completely a user, and I'm not being really a contributor for this. So what do we need to do in the future in order to get this utopia of not only to having the open data, but to processing this and to having the products and not relying on the people who do these efforts for free, maybe sometimes, and sometimes pay, but not as well as we wanted. So what could be this future having all this data now? Please feel free, anyone, to maybe someone, Sam, I don't know who wants to answer.
Yep. I can jump in unless someone else would like to. So in the United States, we have a national transit database that transit systems are required to provide their data to, and this is in order to receive federal funding. That does not exist for bike share yet. Bike share is not considered transit by the federal government in the U.S. To me, it's been transit since day one. It's on two wheels, but it's still transit. And I think that as the definition for transit expands to include bike share and funding goes to bike share systems, I imagine at that point there probably will be a requirement for system operators or owners to provide maybe monthly data or annual data into a national database. We tried this with NABSA years ago, as Sam can talk about as well, but it didn't. It's a burden for operators who already have so many other things to do. So it kind of it percolated, and then it just kind of faded away over a year. So that's unfortunate, but I think that'll be, giving that funding, I think will be very helpful in encouraging the data to be provided.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much, Paul. Please, Sam, let's go with you because already Paul mentioned the federal government in the US. And I have a question from the audience, which is, license will be required starting from GBFS on the version 3.0. And also, I would like to, maybe you can develop around what is the future for North American cities, not considered Mexico, North American as US. So please, maybe you want to answer this?
Yeah, so a few themes coming out of here, and maybe I can chat about that. So yeah, I'll just speak to some comments here. So we've got someone in the audience, actually, Mitch Vars. He actually wrote the first version of GBFS. He sat on the NABSA board. He's a former board member of NABSA, and I believe he's announcing there's a version 3.0 coming out soon. And that's Mitch. I see him on my screen now. So so he's actually announcing he now works with Mobility Data, the organization that NABSA partners with for the development of GBFS, and so licensing will be a requirement in version 3.0. So that's a kind of an announcement there, which maybe I'll just add a little context onto, is a great thing. So, one of the in my presentation, I had talked about the guidance document for municipalities in particular, sort of government staff people engaging with GBFS or encouraging them to engage more with GBFS and the benefits that could add. There are questions right now about licensing, and so some guidance around that and inclusion in the specification is helpful. So moving on to talk a little bit more about what Paul had sort of mentioned about this intersection of policy and ultimately, the growth of bike sharing and shared micromobility, and then also how data supports that. So just as kind of a policy update, I guess, for folks that are interested in the US in particular, there is a bill right now, actually, that has not passed, but would make bike sharing an associated transit improvement. And that's a very important sort of definitional change that could happen, that sort of, as Paul's mentioning, could end up, allowing more funding to be possible. And so, and weds, bike sharing closer in US policy, although as we all know, we've always thought about it as transportation, but it's not necessarily the way that policy, and maybe in all countries. That'd be interesting to hear from Blay as well on this topic and kind of what's going on more in Latin America. But what we find in North America is that it's not actually integrated fully in policy. And so that does have implications, and the way for funding and expansion, and then the benefits that can be realized of these systems. And the way that data is really powerful in this is that it really does show, helps us to demonstrate the benefits and also the growth, and that and how seriously in some ways to take bike sharing as a transportation mode, which these mapping efforts, and also GBFS and the reports like the Latin American report that Labiks put out, and also the State of the Industry report for North America that NABSA is also annually putting out. So hopefully that kind of spoke to some of the themes that we're talking here about.
Just very quickly add just a quick comment to Mitch's mention of version 3 of GBFS making a license mandatory. That's great, obviously, for my project, because it will clarify exactly what we can do and not do with the data, as in, even if it doesn't have a free license, an open license, but potentially we can map it, but it'd have to be subject to the specifics of a license. But just having that license would be great. But actually, the reason why I'm jumping in is I made a reference to the second city on bike sharing map in 2010, and it was actually Mitch who told me about it way back then. So he basically is responsible for bike sharing map not just being a map of London, but being a map of a quarter of the bike shares of the world. So in a way, we are in bike share royalty to have Mitch commenting in our session this afternoon. So hi, Mitch.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. This is wonderful. Let me just jump into some of the bigger picture that we are living now, almost more than a year with COVID-19. So I already made this question to the panel because I think this is very important for the people who are not so much familiar with the technical aspects. But I mean, considering the current situation around mobility and COVID-19, what are the main challenges and opportunities for the future of micromobility, bike sharing systems, data? And do you think that open data could eventually help to develop more bike sharing systems, and especially evenly around the world, because when we see the maps, we honestly have to say that we can see the big difference between how many systems we have in the north part of the world than in the south part of the world. So for me, the main question has been, and this is why I have been always like looking forward to do business models for bike sharing systems, because it's like how we can really develop this evenly around the cities around the world, and how, specifically for you guys, how do you think that this micromobility data could help, open data could help to eventually develop this? So I know that Paul and Sam have been interested in this question. So please, Sam, maybe that you.
Sure, I'm happy to go unless Paul, you were really wanting to make
go
the
ahead.
first comments. Okay. Yeah, so COVID-19, obviously, you know, global pandemic and a lot of impact. I think one of the important things for bike sharing and shared micromobility that's come out of the last year and really is still continuing is that it has highlighted, I think more than ever, for folks that were less familiar with the benefits or kind of less just aware of what was existing in their city, that's actually highlighted how bike sharing and shared micromobility are really important mobility options in cities. And in a North American context, you know, really helped to fill transit gaps when public transportation had to, you know, shut down or pause service to do extra cleanings and things like this, and also fill transit gaps. And so I think that there's been a highlighting and kind of a spotlighting in a way that hasn't existed before. I think all of us involved, we've seen it. We've been seeing this the whole time, but it's kind of gained a new limelight that it hadn't had in the past for the public more generally. And I don't think that's going to go away. And so that's kind of an important, an important new development, I think. And in terms of the way that data supports that, I think capturing the data, and I'll mention one example about how data is important in the world, that I'm in. We all know that ridership has gone down due to the pandemic in general, but what's really important is actually the ability to see the resiliency of bike share and shared micromobility within this moment. And data has helped demonstrate that by being able to capture ridership and also where ridership declined, but also how ridership has increased over time. That's been a really important insight that data can help show, which is the resiliency of bike share and shared micromobility, within this context, and also just when riders were riding more. And we did see certain surges. In fact, some systems hit their peak ridership numbers early on in the pandemic before there was lockdowns and things like this. So I'll leave it there, but that's one example of COVID and then how data is helpful.
Mm-hmm. We saw it in the UK as well. We saw huge numbers last summer for London, and different kinds of users as well. You know, people using in different ways, which was amazing to see.
Mm. And I would add that, all local government and state budget and local government, state and municipal, provincial, national budgets are finite. And if a government worker has a set amount of funds to provide to transport, they're going to have to move the most people per peso, per dollar, per reais. They need that data in order to figure out how that money can be best spent. So collecting the number of trips, of customers, of vehicle miles traveled, whatever data that our systems are producing, we need that, so then we can show the policymakers with that checkbook that bike sharing is worth it, that we can move people more efficiently than other modes that other modes can do, motor vehicles, and in some cases other modes of transit. But we need the data in order to show that. And we need to know where systems are so that we can learn from each other. I may not know a system exists in my own country unless I learn about it from the Meddin Bike-sharing World Map or the bike sharing map. But we need to be working collaboratively, excuse me. But we need to work together in order to share data and ensure that we all know what's going on and how to get data that we may need to try to get more funding to get a new system. I saw in Manaus, someone from Manaus was writing earlier in the comment section of there's no bike share system here yet. Well, maybe if the local government in Manaus knew that bike share systems in Sao Paulo and Rio were providing so many trips and helping people get around, then maybe they would make the decision to fund bike sharing in their hometown. So anyway.
Yeah. Just to add, I think Mexico City is a good example in Latin America, and Iván is the guy from BSSs, so I think he knows more than me to talk about. But Mexico City, they have open data, and they use this data, and they do interview with the users, so they know the behavior change. They know who are these users, if they use it to use car or train or other mode of transportation. So they pay for EcoBC, it's a public financial. So they have numbers and they have statistics and they know the environmental benefits of the system. So they can justify this money that they are paying for, and they know the bonus. It's more than the money that they are paying. So the environmental benefits are very good for the city that have a lot of problem with air pollution. And I think Mexico City, for me, in Latin America and North America, because there we are the same, Latin and North America, I think Mexico City is a very good example how they use this open data to justify, to implement, to grow the system, to change. I think I think they will change the technology of the systems, all public financial, and they have the numbers that justify this kind of costs, public costs. So I think Mexico City is a very good example about that.
Yeah. I
think if I can complement, because he was one that was there at the beginning and from, 9 years with EcoBC, but I think this data show us if the city has a goal when implement a bike sharing system, you need data to monitor if you are achieving your goals or not, and what you need to do to achieve your goals as the bike sharing system in a city.
Just go ahead, Blair, before I make for you the next question, and I would like in the next 10 minutes, because we're almost there for 11:30. We don't have so much time, but I would like to go for Latin American realities and how we can take these lessons and how we can take this experience that you already guys have in your own countries and maybe in others, because I know that you guys have been working in many other countries, but how we can take this to Latin American realities. And I have to say, considering the examples for bike sharing systems in Latin America and for micromobility projects in general, we have a phrase that I love, which is from political will to public policy, right? So political will comes from a group of people who is asking a vision to become a public policy. I'm sorry, let me just begin again. So there's a group of people wanting something, could be micromobility or something else, and they have a vision of a state of living, and they are asking governments for something. In this case, I would like to come for the example for micromobility, bike sharing, and open data. So how we can go from political will to public policy, so we are not begging for help to the governments only or for political will, because this also depends in most of our cities from political will. There's not really like a micromobility public policy developed already. So maybe we discussed already, but from your experience, Len, because I know that you have both, like, you have research on the cases from the world, and now you have the reality, at least from Brazil, which is the biggest country in Latin America. So how we can overcome this challenge, and what are the main challenges? You mentioned transparency, you mentioned data standards. So should we ask for more data standards from our governments, or what should we do more in the future?
Ivan, really sorry. It was very hard to understand you. I don't know if everybody had the same problem, I think, yet. So you were asking for me or for other person, and if you can resume your question, because it was very hard to understand you. I don't know if you had problems with your microphone or something like that.
No, sorry for the long explanation, but the shortcut is like, and this could be for the rest of the panel as well, please. What should we be doing to have these public policies for open data and standards, especially in the global south? Like, should we ask the governments in Africa to do public policy for open data standards in transport, maybe? Or in Latin America, should we ask for public policies on transparency? Or what could be the next steps trying to take open data standards or open data to help to micromobility public policies, right? Maybe I'm not, please, someone if you get it.
I can take a stab at what our recommendations are for GBFS and how we do that. So as Oliver mentioned, GBFS is a standard, but it's not necessarily open. But the benefits that are most realized when it's an open data standard. And so in our recommendations to municipalities, one of our recommendations is, at the local level in local regulation to require that GBFS is published open so that we can realize all these benefits for, mapping and trip planning and research and analysis and visualizations on all of these great things. So at the moment, we're really thinking about it as a local regulation issue or a local policy issue of trying to kind of get, cities in general when they're wanting to engage with bike sharing, that publishing GBFS openly is a requirement in there.
Yeah, I would agree with Sam. There's a saying that says it doesn't exist until it's measured, and so with bike share data, it needs to be measured, and whether that's GBFS or MDS, the mobility data specification that came out of Los Angeles in the US, and seems to be picking up a lot of steam for modes that have a GPS, a global positioning system function built in. That seems to be a very popular API and maybe a way that many municipalities in the US and Canada are moving, and maybe Mexico as well in North America. But it's just important to track the data. Whether the requirement is coming from the local government, the municipality, or the state, or the province, or the federal government. It's so important that it's tracked for all the reasons that have been stated before.
Thank you, fantastic. Oliver, do you want to add something to that?
Just an observation, really, about actually the recent wins by PBSC shift into South America have meant that, in a way, the free and potentially open data provision is already coming in. It's quite beneficial that these systems, some companies who operate in multiple regions around the world, have already built mechanisms for releasing their data in GBFS, and then for them it's trivial for them to expand it to new areas such as South America, which they then do. And so, although the globalization of bike share solutions potentially means that we'll get the open data, we'll get data open, or at least free and potentially easy to turn open should it be required by a city hall. It should be quite easy to do. So very much, very encouraged by the increased spread of GBFS amongst many regions of the world. As I say, there is a conversation has already been had about the fact that these days, in many regions of the world, and presumably, if not already, coming soon to South America, dockless bike share systems are very much the way forward, because it means much less expense for city halls often. And those come with their own challenges relating to privacy, which, as I say, Sam's already mentioned, NABSA is already looking at, but also become their own challenges in terms of provision of that data. But I think for Latin America, we're already there in terms of Mexico City, which is purpose of this conversation, I'm counting as Latin America, even though it's North America, because it has had an open platform publishing its journeys, which is still relatively rare, as well as its live docking data for many, many years. But other cities, as I say, have been running for a long time, and the switch to, for instance, the BSS ones with the increased availability of data has been a good thing. I was blocked for many years from South America by, I forget the previous operator of the city of Rio and Sao Paulo. They basically blocked all, I think they blocked, either blocked a whole of the UK, or they certainly blocked a whole of UCL IP addresses, because I think I was basically pinging them too often to get the data. Hopefully those sorts of roadblocks are a thing of the past, because new operators are coming in which have been more understanding of the benefits of having these open data platforms, and I've not had issues like that since, certainly for South America. So I think we're already there. I think things are getting good, and if more cities start to have these platforms and they start to get used and applications come out of them, then the remaining cities and potential cities in South America will hopefully feature it as part of the default needs for it. So, hopefully we're moving in the right direction in Latin America.
Fantastic, Oliver. Thank you very much. We are just 2 minutes until we close this fantastic panel, but I would like to mention a fantastic comment from Hikaru that says that generate and share mobility data has to be a practice in Latin American municipalities. But before that, we need, of course, to implement the NOC systems in Latin America, and then going to Africa, and then going to Southeast Asia to generate the systems and then generate the data. So we need to push to translate this data, the few data that we have now, into public benefits that everyone can see, health benefits, of course, environmental benefits. So this can become as part of the public policies in health, in transport, in economics, accessibility to cities. So I guess we are in the previous stage, as we don't have bike sharing as a normal, or micromobility system as a normal. So we need to first become this as a normal in every city, every side of the city, and then maybe we can go into the next stage. I don't know. This is just an idea, but please, we have just 1 minute. Blaine, maybe as a hoster as well, would you like to make some remarks of the closing the event, or closing this?
Just one thing that I was thinking now, that it's about in our reality in Latin America, in our big cities. I don't know too much about United States, but in Latin America we have very big cities like São Paulo, Mexico City, Buenos Aires, as you know. And in these cities, bike sharing systems, they are complement the transit systems of the city. So they're very important. In Rio, a researcher from our team, Juliana, he did the research, and one of the most, the stations with more trips per day in Rio is the Bike Hill station that's near of our central train station. So it's not rich people that live around the systems and with a lot of money, but it's people that come from afar, from another cities around Rio, that use the Bike Hill to their last mile in the city downtown, because it's the cheapest integration that we have in the city. So if you took the train and the bus, or the train and a tram, or the system will be I forgot the word, but it's the cheapest option, the bike sharing system there for integration. And in Latin American, bike sharing systems are very important for transit integration, for complement the trips, for our first and last mile. So it's social inclusion too. We need, like in Brazil, we always ask credit card. That is an obstacle that we have for users, for some users. But in other cities in Latin America, you have free systems, or systems that you don't need to have a credit card, you just need your transit card. In Brazil, you have a lack of integration on integration with payments, but we have a physical integration. We have bike sharing systems near from another transport stations. And I think data can show these benefits more for us to understand and to invest on that, and the importance of bike sharing system in our cities and complement of the trips.
Okay, so we are already on the time for this, so I guess it's my duty to close this event. So once again, thank you very much. This is people who really I have been admired for the hard work that has been doing since a long time ago. Oliver O'Brien, thank you very much for being here. Herr from NABSA, thank you very much for being here. For DeMaio, thank you very much for being here as well. And of course, Gabriela, Binatti, my dear friend and admired friend, thank you very much for this. And of course, thank you to Latin American Bike Knowledge Sharing Association, which is leading this fantastic effort, and the Open Knowledge Foundation. And enjoy this fantastic rest of the days for the Open Data Day. And thank you guys in the audience for all the comments, for all the interactions. Thank you to the, sorry, I confused this always. It's the Labiks team as well. Thank you very much. And I guess that would be it from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody. It was a pleasure. Bye.